stop making these podcast interviewing mistakes. Let's talk about it. What's up, pod influencers? My name is Ozil, and I want to welcome you to the Podcast Influence YouTube channel, where I help you amplify your influence with podcasting. And on this channel, I'm going to share with you tips, insights, and strategies on how you can pro up your podcasting game with style and influence. And if this is your first time, welcome, hello. Please consider subscribing down below and hit the notification button. Want to get that out the gates. And of course, if you are a loyal follower, thank you and welcome back. I'm excited because today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, podcast interviewing. And I'm going to share with you 4 common podcast interviewing mistakes with you today. You ready? Let's get right to it. All right, I'm pumped up. So one of the things that I always share with my podcasting clients is that a lot of us didn't go to broadcasting school to learn this skill set of interviewing and how to be a great podcast host. I understand, that this is a podcast and it's raw and uncut, and a lot of us want to get behind the mic and just share our message and interview the way we feel like interviewing. And I get that. I think there's room for that. But I think there's some core foundational principles when it comes to the art of the interview and how to be a great podcast host. And if you're not mindful of it, this could be detrimental to attaining new guests. There's a lot, especially if you want to go on a higher level, a guest profile, there's a lot of guests that will dig into your podcast. And if they see that you're not a great host, that could be held against you, right? So you want to make sure that you are the real deal, that there's some foundational principles that you have nailed down, and we're always learning new things about podcast interviewing. So this is something I'm excited about, and there is a skill set to being a great podcast host. So let's dive right into it. 4 common podcast interviewing mistakes to avoid. So mistake number 1, lack of context. So before you reach out to a guest, know specifically what you want the topic to be about. This will help you in creating the title for the episode and help you be able to craft an interview that it's concise, that is direct, and people know exactly what they're going to get into when they listen to your podcast. Remember, people are listening to your podcast because they want to be entertained, they want to be informed, they want to be educated. So it's imperative that you know exactly what you want that particular podcast episode to be about. It's easier for your listeners to kind of plug into it and be like, okay, that podcast is about this topic, right? Or that skill set. So this will help you create great titles, great copy, and of course, your guests will love you for that because they're going to ask you, what is this podcast episode about? So give them context, and this will help steer for a great conversation when you record. All right, mistake number 2, bad intros. Now, let me preface this by saying that every podcast host has a different style of introducing their guest. But it goes back to what I was saying, the foundational principles. And I believe having an impressive introduction, knowing how to introduce your guest, positions you as a pro podcast host. And that's what this YouTube channel is all about, is helping you pro up, right? So having a great introduction is the way to go. And how do you do that? Well, one of the things that I've learned, one of my personal preference, I'm old school. I love the late night host approach. I love the David Lettermans, the Johnny Carsons of hosting, where they edify, and then they introduce the guest. So they don't mention the guest name in the beginning. They introduce the guest at the very end, right? So this guest has been a part of this organization. He has achieved all, this and that. And they really edify. They understand the art of edification. And then they introduce the guests. So I think that's part of being a great host, is mentioning the accolades, mentioning their achievements, and then you introduce them. And one of the things that you'll notice once you start doing this is that the guests will appreciate that. They'll be like, that's a really great intro. So you've already gotten the interview off to a great start. They appreciate that. They'll love you for that. And having an impressive introduction will leave a lasting impression on them, trust me. This is something that I'm really passionate about in delivering a great introduction. And that's something that a lot of my guests have gone back and say, hey, listen, that intro was one of the best intros I've had, and that makes my day. So no more bad intros. Focus on delivering an amazing, remarkable intro. All right, mistake number 3, over talking. I get it. This is your podcast. You're passionate about the topic and you're passionate about the conversation, and you feel the need, this urge to interject your thoughts, your opinions, your own views to the interview. And I think it's okay. Like, every now and then it's fine to expound on something that the guest mentions or talks about, but you gotta check yourself before you wreck yourself. Shout out to Ice Cube, by the way, because this could really damper the mood in regards to not allowing your guests to really be the star of the show. And I've made this mistake before. You get into the conversation, especially for the podcast hosts that have conversational podcasts, but it's important for you to rein it back and get back to the interview. You brought them in because they are an expert in a certain topic or something that, within the context of the show. So you want to make sure they do a lot more talking than you do. And I see a lot of podcast hosts make a mistake of interrupting their guests. So make sure that you pause, okay? And make sure that you wait until they've gotten everything out, and then you can interject and kind of expound on something. But over talking is a common mistake. I see that a lot with a lot of podcast hosts. So again, check yourself before you wreck yourself. They're the rock star. You're bringing them on your show. So give them the respect and allow them to take the platform. Mistake number 4, letting your guests do all the self-promotional talk. It is your job as the host to do all the research. So have a list of all the websites, the social media links, anything that they're trying to promote, any special links. Have it all listed out way before you press record. Ask them, hey, listen, what are your website? What do you want to promote? Have it all in a Google Doc before you press record and get into the interview. One of the questions that I hear a lot with a lot of podcast hosts is, tell us where we can find you. No, this is your job. This is your job to let your audience know where they can find your guest. So again, what does this sound like? You can reach our guests at podcastinfluence.com. You can reach them at Think Ozeal. You can go to thinkozeal.com, ozealmedia.com. You list it out, okay? Because you're doing the heavy lifting for them, and they will appreciate that. One thing to note, though, is ask them what links they're using. I remember one time I was just trying to make an impression. So I was listing out all the website links and social media links, and I discovered that one of the links wasn't a working link. So the guest actually said, well, that is no longer available. It's no longer live. So make sure that you double check all of your links to make sure they're all live and you're promoting the right links. So that's another little pro tip, just to kind of double check and make sure everything is legit. All right. So do the research, make sure you have all the links ready, and you are the one that's going to let your audience know about their whereabouts. All right, so that is it. That's the 4 common podcast interviewing mistakes. This is something I'm super passionate about, and something I'm pretty sure that I'll be recording a lot more content related to this topic of the art of interviewing and mastering this skill set. Again, you're a podcaster, a lot of you are independent podcasters, and you're just not thinking about what are the mechanics, what are the foundational principles, what do I need to learn from the pros that have been doing it for a long time. So one of the things that I did early on when I started getting really passionate about the art of the interview is studying the greats like the David Lettermans and Johnny Carsons and Howard Sterns, Larry King. There's a lot of people that are amazing. So try to find podcast broadcasters or people who host radio shows and figure out what can you take from them to apply to your podcast interviewing style. One of the things I love about independent podcasting is that it's raw and uncut, and it's definitely you, right? It's a personalized version of you, right? Your voice. But again, if you know the principles, right, you got to know the rules in order for you to break them. And I think when it comes to delivering a great podcast interview, I think everybody should learn from the pros. So hopefully that helps you out. Leave me a comment in the comment section down below. The question of the day is, what is your biggest podcast interviewing challenge? Leave it down below. I would love to hear from you. And as always, guys, thank you so much for being a part of this podcast influence YouTube channel journey. I'm excited to kind of give you a lot of raw and uncut videos and do videos like this where I give you tips and strategies. And I'm always open for new ideas for content. So feel free to reach out to me, ozealmedia11@gmail.com. Also, I decided to start a newsletter. So if you're interested in joining the newsletter, the link will be down below. So join the Podcast Influence where I can email you directly and let you know when a new video drops. All right. Also, I am right now doing this video at the Work Lodge. So this is kind of like a new setup. So I'm kind of getting used to this. So hopefully everything's in frame. I'm trying to do this by myself. So no help today. And hopefully this is worth your time and you guys dig this little video. Shout out to my boy, Mike Tacker of the Mike Tacker Show podcast. He is the owner here of the Work Lodge. If you are in Dallas or in Houston, check out the Work Lodge. It's an amazing co-working space. I love the vibe. There's private rooms. There's rooms for meetings and workshops, and just I love it here. So theworklodge.com, check them out. Shout out to my boy Mike Tacker. So he has a great podcast, by the way. Check it out. It's a podcast on his personal entrepreneurial journey. Highly recommend it. I love it. And go check it out and support my boy Mac Tacker. All right, guys, I'm out. I gotta go. Thanks again for tuning in. I love you guys. Remember to continue pressing record and speaking your truth. See you next week. Peace and one love.